Welcome to March. Uh, Boy, spring break's just 3 weeks from now. So we got 3 weeks, then we got spring break. So hope you had a good weekend. I had a very busy weekend, and we wanted to go to a movie. We just couldn't fit it in our schedule because Saturday, my wife and I left 7:45 in the morning and drove to my sister's house in Oklahoma, which we were in my pickup and pulling a U-Haul trailer. And so it took 5.5, 6 hours to get there because she lives out in western Oklahoma. And we loaded up her dining room table and chairs and brought it home and got home at midnight Saturday. So we were gone all day. It was just the two of us loading up this table and chairs. Because my sister has moved to Louisiana, and her table was still at her old house in Oklahoma that they have not sold yet. So they said they were just going to donate it to charity or something. And we're like, hey, we'd love to have it. So they said, yes, please. We'd rather have family have it because it's not just a dining room table. My sister's husband is a doctor, and he has been for nearly 40 years. He's retiring actually. And so they had a huge house, like over 6,000 square feet, and they had very nice stuff through there. And so they moved to Louisiana and to like a 2,500 square foot house. They're retiring. So the dining room table they had is a replica of the Biltmore Estate table that the Vanderbilts own in North Carolina. So I've never been to the Biltmore Estate, but it's huge, and I'm gonna show you the table. Now our table is not this big because nobody could fit a table this big unless you're the Vanderbilts. But I'm gonna show you the replica, the table that this is a replica of. Look at this beast, man. This seats like, I don't know, 24 people, 28 people. It's huge. Our chairs look very, very similar to those chairs. They don't have the little posts that stick up, but ours does have all the fancy stuff on top of the chair. They're red fabric seats. They're very similar. And our table is not as wide or as long as this one, but it's gorgeous. It's a wonderful table. The table that we have is 12 feet long and almost 4 feet wide, and we have 12 chairs around it. It's huge. But we built a huge dining room, so it actually fits in our house. So that's why we decided to go get it, and because it's a gorgeous table. And I don't know how much they spent on it originally, but they gave it to us free with these 12 outstanding chairs and the big 12-foot long dining table. So that's what we did over the weekend. Spent all day Saturday, got home at midnight. I was worn out, made myself sick. And then Sunday we had to get help to unload the trailer. So I got some family, and we all went and unloaded it, which was a lot easier than just the two of us loading that. That table was heavy, even after taking out the 3 leaves. I don't know how my wife and I got it in the trailer, but we did. But anyway. But that was our weekend. So hopefully you had something good happen this weekend. It was nice weather, beautiful. So all right, guys. Well, we're going to get started. Let's see what our cybersecurity holds for us this week. We go to our grade screen as usual to see what's what. Everything from Module 4 should be done now. The IDS project, I know Caitlin got hers turned in. Griffin, I haven't seen yours yet, but should be done with Module 4. We're going to start Module 5, which will take us all the way through the 3rd week of April. So we're going to be on this for a little while. We're going to talk about network security, virtual computing today. So let's close Module 4 folder because we're done with that. Open the Module 5 folder, and let's start with, I'm not going to do the checklist. Checklist, I'll show you. It just shows all the lessons and how long it should take you to do it. And as you see, it's not drastic on here. Page 2. 25 points for each. Got a 30-point discussion-based assessment, which we'll probably do this time. And we have an exam at the end of this module, 100 points. So it shouldn't take you more than 50 minutes any week. No more than 50 minutes, even for the exam at the end. So, all right, let's go to lesson 1, virtual computing. Large networks commonly use host virtualization to run server services or provide secure user desktops. Let's see what the definition of that is. That's the process of creating a simulation of a computing environment where the virtual system can simulate the hardware, the operating system, and applications of a typical computer without being a separate physical computer. So it's like creating a fake computer in your computer virtually. So because of this, cybersecurity professionals must understand virtualization and some of the risks and vulnerabilities associated with it. Virtualization allows a computer to run multiple operating systems at the same time because you've created a little miniature computer in its own environment. It can be installed and run simultaneously on a single computer. A virtual platform requires at least 3 components. So let's look at this. Select each component to understand how virtualization works. So this is a pretty cool concept. One of the videos we've watched in this class was the scammer payback. And when he deals with those scammers and they log into his computer and, and they're trying to cheat him, it's a virtual computer. And he talks about that from time to time. He has a virtual computer set up inside his computer that the scammers, they can't tell. They think they're logging into an old person's computer so they can cheat them out a bunch of money. But he has a virtual computer set up, so he can very much control the environment that it's in, and that's how he allows them access to his computer, because he sets up a computer inside his computer, and they think that is where everything's at. So interesting. I don't know exactly how that works. I've never set up a virtual computer in a computer, but great idea. All right, here's what it needs. It needs a guest operating system. It could be Windows 8.1, Windows XP, Server 2012 R2, 2003 R2s, Open SUSE 13. Whatever. You have a guest operating system. A hypervisor, VMN. I'm not sure what VMM is. Hypervisor. And then the host operating system, the physical resources, the CPU, memory, network, operating system, storage. So you have your host computer, you've got a hypervisor that manages, and you can set up your virtual computer with any kind of operating system you want. It doesn't have to be whatever the same as the host computer is, because you're setting up an entirely new virtual computer inside your host computer. So they can set it up with all kinds of different operating systems. So need a refresher on virtual technology? Let's discover how virtual technology is changing the way we use computers. So we have this video, so make sure you can hear the sound. Minute 55, that's not bad.
Imagine owning a huge hotel building in New York City. How would you use the space? Would you create one enormous room that could only be used by one guest at a time? Probably not. That would be a waste of space. A better approach would be to divide up your building. By creating smaller usable rooms, you can rent them out to multiple guests, or even combine them if needed. Computer servers used to look a lot like the empty hotel room. They could only run one application with one operating system at a time. Servers only used about 12% of their resources. Like the giant hotel room, it was pretty inefficient. That is, until virtual machines. VMs take pieces of a server and divide it up, creating smaller servers that can run multiple operating systems, allocate resources, and operate completely from the cloud. Businesses can also rent space on a server and run operating systems and applications on that space without the expense of purchasing their own physical servers. A hypervisor or supervisory program runs on the main server and can break up space for running multiple virtual machines, even adjusting for when one VM needs more or less space. Entire business models, like Amazon Web Services and Microsoft Azure, are based on a sale or rental of virtual machines. Companies save money by not having to purchase servers, house them on site, and maintain them over time. And IT professionals maintain virtual machines without ever needing to leave their desks. If downtime occurs for a virtual machine, it can be remotely moved to a different server so that it's back up and running quickly. So we still need physical servers, But space, money, and time are used more effectively by virtual machines. You just might have to skip the room service.
All right. So, man, we are so connected in so many ways. Everybody's connected virtually across the world, it seems. Just kind of crazy. All right, let's go to page 2. Virtualization vulnerabilities. You know, there has to be some vulnerabilities because we're so connected. There's just almost impossible. Virtualization can require a significant amount of training, and organizations often need an entire IT staff dedicated to managing virtual servers. Server management can be outsourced to another company, but there's several factors to consider, including security. A hypervisor-based attack, remember the hypervisor said is the software that runs your virtual servers. A hypervisor-based attack is an exploit in which an intruder takes advantage of vulnerabilities in the program used to allow multiple operating systems share a single hardware processor. So a compromised hypervisor can allow the hacker to attack each virtual machine on a virtual host. So here's the advantages. Lower cost due to fewer required devices, right? You can rent space on somebody else's server with a virtual hypervisor controlling it. One virtual server can replace at least 5 dedicated servers. It's easier to test different security scenarios in a sandbox environment because you can create its own little environment there. Easier to mitigate hardware vulnerabilities because you're not having to have as much hardware. Ability to create fully patched servers within minutes of request. The disadvantages: fewer servers means more significant hardware failures, right? Because if one piece of hardware fails, it may affect multiple virtual platforms because they're all using the same hardware. You need to monitor and secure virtual networks. There's various security issues because you're obviously connecting over the internet, which makes your server vulnerable. And security practice may need modification to fit the virtual environment. All right, so that's the end of that page. Page 3. Virtualization and security. So it's important to remember that each type of virtualization may contain some sort of security risk. While virtualization can improve security, it does not have the capability to prevent all attacks. In fact, nothing does if you're connected to the web. The only way to prevent attacks is not be connected to the internet. Update and patch hosts. Hosts should have the latest firmware installed. And virtualized infrastructure like Microsoft Hyper-V should have the latest security patches installed in the hypervisor there. It's also important to keep your VMware tools on your virtual machines up to date. Use the latest firmware. All active network devices like switches and routers should have the latest firmware, so it'll have all the latest security. Patch and update operating systems. Every operating system should be fully patched using automatic updates. Don't make somebody have to click yes for updates. Let it set to where it automatically updates it as they're available. Patch installation should be scheduled after business hours using automatic reboots. You know, a lot of times you have an update come to your computer. It says your computer needs to restart to install this. Well, you schedule those to happen at night when your business is not using the computer, where it'll automatically every night restart for any updates it needs. Use antivirus and anti-malware. So proper antivirus and anti-malware solutions designed for virtual environments should be installed because they make specific ones for virtual computers. Virtualization is just as much a security risk as physical computing. Don't fool yourself. However, these steps go a long way in helping reduce the number of cyber threats to any kind of virtualized system. Page 4. There's 2 different types of hypervisors. Type 1. So type 1 is a hypervisor that runs directly on the hardware, meaning more resource can be assigned to the virtual machines. Examples include VMware ESXi, Citrix Zen, KVM, Microsoft Hyper-V. Those all run directly on the hardware. So your hypervisor's controlling that. Type 2 is an hypervisor that runs on top of an operating system like Microsoft Windows or Apple Mac OS or Linux. So Windows is running, and then there's some software that runs in Windows. The hypervisor is a piece of software running in Windows or Mac OS or whatever, and it controls them. So type 2 hypervisors are typically used on desktops or laptops instead of like big servers. Popular examples include the Oracle VM VirtualBox and VMware Workstation. So that's some brand names that run on an operating system. It's a little different. Hypervisor security. So a virtual platform includes an additional layer for the attention of security professionals. Hypervisor software is subject to patches and security updates like any other software. As the use of the virtual platforms grow, so do the attacks. So hypervisors are increasingly the targets of attacks these days. This becomes even more complex when the network structure, like switches and routers, are also virtual. So when the network infrastructure is implemented in software, it may not be subject to inspection and troubleshooting by system administrators who must rely entirely on the hypervisor developer for security. So you may not be able to control as much of your security if you're using a hypervisor. VM escaping. This is an exploit in which the attacker runs code on a virtual machine that allows an operating system to break out and interact directly with the hypervisor. Such an exploit may give the attacker access to the host operating system and all the other virtual machines running on that same host. Did you know Oracle VM VirtualBox is free? Is a free and open source. That means that anyone can see the code and understand it, which also makes it where hackers can try to study the code too. It's an open source hosted hypervisor that you can download and try for free. So if you want to play with setting up a virtual computer, that may be your path right there. Page 6, guidelines for securing virtualization resources. Okay, number 1, take snapshots of optimal VM states. That's a great way to preserve the state of a virtual machine at a given moment in time when a user returns to a snapshot. So all changes since the snapshot be gone. So if you use a virtual machine, it's good to take some snapshots from time to time, because if something messes something up, a hacker gets in there, you can reset to a previous snapshot and wipe out any changes since then. Least privilege. Always enforce the principle of least privilege for access to virtual machines. Least privilege. That means if you need to access the virtual machine, I'm only going to give you access to specifically just the areas you need to do your job. I'm not going to let you just access the whole virtual machine. Just the areas of that virtual machine that you need for your job, because the more privilege I grant, the more chance of security breaches. Understand models and services. Become familiar with the different cloud deployment models and service types. Know the differences. So recognize the differences between the virtualization types and identify which are more suited for the user's needs. We looked at some different type of hypervisors already, 1 and 2. Patch often. Ensure that your virtual machine software, as well as the host and guest operating systems, are patched regularly. Make all those updates. Securing virtual servers. Today, most new servers are virtual. This is because powerful hardware enables machines to run multiple applications simultaneously and increase the security and dependability. Secure Shell, known as SSH, is a network protocol that allows 2 computers to communicate securely. SSH makes it possible for the client and the server to communicate securely over a public, unsecured network like the internet. The internet is not secure. SSH can be found on anything from Linux servers to VoIP to security cameras. SSH is getting very common out there. And just lock a secure connection between 2 computers. How does it work? When users connect through SSH, they're dropped into a shell session, which is a text-based interface which the user can interact with the server. And for the duration of that session, any commands the user types in the local terminal are sent through an encrypted SSH tunnel and executed on the server. So it encrypts everything automatically in that SSH shell session to that tunnel. All right, page 7. Dollar check. We knew that was coming. All right, I'm going to put the chat on where I can see it. We call this A, B, and C. We'll make that easy to answer. A, B, and C. Jacob needs a way to preserve the state of a virtual machine at a given moment in time. What should he use? Should he take a screenshot? Should he use an ISO? Or should he use a snapshot to preserve the state at a given moment in time? A, B, or C? Anybody still here?
Snapshot.
Snapshot. You're absolutely right. You bet. Snapshot. So that way it can return back to that point in time. That's a great way to do it. How is a virtual machine useful? It simulates software that isn't directly installed on a physical machine. It increases internet and computer processing speeds, or it connects multiple users on a local area network. Interesting. We can call it A, B, or C. Which one do you think it is? How's a virtual machine useful?
A.
It should simulate software that's not directly involved, because this is a virtual machine. Absolutely. You can run multiple operating systems at the same time. And you can simulate software that's not directly installed. Number 3, virtualization security. Which of the following manages the virtual machine environment and facilitates all the interaction with the computer hardware network? So this is what manages it. Does the host manage it, the guest manage it, or the hypervisor? We know it's the hypervisor. I'll give you that right there, right? Yep, the hypervisor, because we talked about different types of hypervisors and all that good stuff. Last question. What's one advantage of using a virtual machine? Increased security, availability to all, resource sharing. There's got to be an advantage to do it, or you wouldn't do it. For one thing, it could increase security because it's not your regular. Oh, it didn't like that. Oh, I thought that was it. Okay. Resource sharing then, right? Because we talked about the big floor where you have one room and you're wasting all that space. This way we can all share one server and not have to have multiple ones. All right. That's it. Let's look at our assignment. It goes with it. Start. Which of the following is an advantage of virtualization? Which hypervisor allows more resources to be assigned to virtual machines? Type 1, 2, 3, or 4? I don't even think we talked about it. Type 3 or 4. What's it called when a hacker runs code on a virtual machine to allow an operating system to break out and interact directly? Oh, we talked about that. That was one of the security things you got to watch out for. Which tool allows the user to preserve the state at a given moment in time? We just answered the question on that one. We'll answer that one now. Snapshot. Which of the following allows virtual devices to run? A guest, a hypervisor, a host, or an ISO device? So there you go. Pretty straightforward. 5 questions. If you didn't get last week's turned in, get that done. Let's wrap up with module 4, and we're in module 5 for the next month and a half. So 3 weeks till spring break. This is an A day if anyone needs to be here, Wednesday or Friday. So otherwise, we'll catch you guys next time. Have a great week.